The RiskIQ Risk Reporting Score was created to bring management, vulnerability teams, and operations staff together to understand the current and future risk and track if security is improving or deteriorating over time. This helps CISOs to understand the effectiveness and impact of their security programs, tools, and people. By tracking improving or deteriorating scores over time, the effectiveness of security programs and their costs can be calculated. Vulnerability management staff now have a way to understand their current risks with regards to all of the organization's externally facing digital assets. They can easily understand if a 0-day vulnerability will affect their organization, for example. Risk reporting asset information can easily be exported as a CSV file to be used by operations staff to track remediation efforts. Operations staff can now correct security issues knowing that active monitoring on the organization's enterprise digital footprint will automatically detect changes and update the asset information accordingly. The risk reporting process is as follows. The digital footprint is analyzed and a digital footprint risk reporting score is created. As the security remediations are performed, those new changes are reflected in the organization's digital footprint. This causes a change in the risk reporting score. As these changes are tracked over time, it will show how effective an organization's security program is doing. Metrics roll up to factors which roll up to subcategories. Subcategories then roll up to categories, and categories ultimately roll up to the overall risk reporting score. For example, the overall score consists of all the factors in the model. The categories consist of all the factors in its subcategories. The overall score is determined by the categories, but is not an average of the categories. Here's a breakdown how the risk reporting score is determined. The building block of a risk reporting score is a metric. An example of a metric could be all websites with a critically scored CVE. Metrics measure the raw quantity of a policy violation, vulnerability, configuration, exposure of service or administrative complexity, and a digital footprint of externally facing assets. RiskIQ utilizes over 40 different metrics when calculating an organization's risk reporting score. Metrics are then used to calculate a factor that provides a relative measure of the issues defined. A factor is a subcategory which a combination of individual metrics, for example, subcategory for CVE exposure is made up of critical, high, medium, and low scored CVE individual metrics. Different mathematical models are used in the factor calculation that are appropriate to the individual component metrics based on a scale. An example would be that the marginal impact of the 1,000th website with a high CVE would be much less than the first one. A score is then calculated at the overall category and subcategory level based on the component metrics and factors using a weighted sum of factors. Metrics are grouped into subcategories, which are in turn grouped into a parent category. The scores at both the category and subcategory levels are derived directly from the component metrics. Here is a breakdown of the risk report. The risk reporting overview section displays the organization's risk report score. The score is calculated from two categories: threat indicators and security posture. Threat indicators are active observations of malicious or suspicious activity on an organization's digital footprint. Assets flagged in this area should immediately be investigated and remediated to improve the organization's security risk. Threat indicators are security issues sourcing from your organization's assets that are part of your digital footprint. Assets flags are worthy of immediate attention to investigate and remediate. Host reputation are hosts that are part of your organization's inventory that appear on RiskIQ's blacklist. IP reputation is a view of how externally monitoring organizations view your IP addresses based on their observed behavior of hosts on those IP addresses. This information is aggregated into the Firehole IP list data feed, and RiskIQ matches those list hits against an organization's IP blocks. The malware subcategory. RiskIQ crawls your enterprise assets on a regular basis, inspecting individual links and web pages. As part of the inspection process, the artifacts are screened for the presence of malware. Artifacts identified are flagged on the RiskIQ malware list. Third-party lists such as Google Safe Browsing and VirusTotal are also incorporated into this analysis. The subcategory phish. RiskIQ crawls your enterprise assets every 3 days. As part of the inspection process, the web pages are screened for the presence of phish. Any suspected web pages identified are flagged on the RiskIQ Fish List. Third-party lists such as Google Safe Browsing and VirusTotal are also incorporated into this analysis. The main category is security posture. Security posture is the measurement of the maturity and complexity of an organization's security program based on the analysis of externally facing assets that comprise their digital footprint. It is comprised of technical and non-technical policies and best practices, processes, and controls that mitigate risk of external threats on your digital attack surface. These can be vulnerabilities in frameworks, operating systems, open ports, expired SSL certificates, or out-of-date algorithms in use. Website CVE exposure. The security posture related to the management of an organization's website portfolio is determined through the analysis of the website's components. Frameworks, server software, third-party plugins are matched against known vulnerability exposures daily. These identified potential avenues of compromise should be further investigated by the organization with vulnerability assessment tools. Only active websites and web components with version numbers contribute to a risk reporting score. Domain administration subcategory analyzes domain registrations to determine who and where domains are managed and registered. This analysis can help to identify and stop threats including but not limited to domain hijacking, domain shadowing, email spoofing, phishing, and illegally transferred domains. Currently, this is an informational metric only and does not contribute to the risk score. Domain configuration subcategory uses Extensible Provisioning Protocol, EPP, domain status codes to determine the status and health of a domain and name registration. Please note that every domain has at least one status code, but sometimes domains can have more than one. Hosting and networking. Autonomous system numbers are analyzed and mapped to organizations. Currently, this is only an informational metric and does not contribute to the risk score. Open ports. RiskIQ undertakes basic TCP SYNAC mass scanning of 114 open ports on all addresses in the IP4 space. RiskIQ matches those IPs with observed open ports against an organization's IP blocks. Website security policies. The organization's website portfolio is analyzed to determine the website's configuration and implementation of best practices in securing customer data. Configuration policies are tested by checking HTTP header response against the OWASP security header project. The websites themselves are inspected daily for security policy violations, and only active websites contribute to a risk score. SSL configuration. Analysis on website SSL certificates and configuration is performed. This can identify outdated encryption, wildcard, and self-signed certificates that can be leveraged by rogue actors to make rogue hosts appear to be trusted. SSL organization. By examining the SSL organization, this can identify the risk of the SSL certificate expiring, use of a weak cipher, and potential exposure to fraudulent SSL registrations. Currently, this is an informational metric only and does not contribute to the risk score. The risk reporting score is a way to understand your organization's current and future risk. It allows management, vulnerability teams, and operations to work together to secure and protect your organization. Tracking the risk report score allows organizations to see how well their overall security program is working over time. The risk reporting score is calculated based on over 40 individual metrics that roll up to factors which weights are applied upon to categories and subcategories. The weights are used to create a risk profile. Currently, all organizations have the same weights, but soon organizations will be able to customize their weights to create a unique risk profile. This will allow organizations to align their risk profile to their security programs. Thank you for joining us today. If you'd like more information, you can call us at 1-888-415-4447 or email us at sales@riskiq.net.